good morning and Merry Christmas. Thank you so much for being with us this morning for our Paradise Church Christmas message. And we're obviously not at Paradise this morning. We're actually at the Sebring Mansion. And our thanks to Lynn Beery for allowing us to come and be on site. We were looking for a way to close out our Christmas series. We've been talking about A Christmas Carol and Charles Dickens and that whole era and all the ideas and nostalgia that come from that. And so we found this to be just the perfect environment for us to bring that final Christmas message to you. So my name is David Anderson. Thank you for joining us, for being with us today. A few things I wanted to tell you in terms of just general church announcements. We're online today, obviously, and we're going to be online also next Sunday as well for New Year's Day. We will be back in the building on January 8th with all three services, our 8 o'clock chapel service, our 10 o'clock sanctuary service, and our 11:15 contemporary table service. And so all of those will be back ready to go and taking on the new year of 2023. The building's going to be closed this coming week, and so many of the staff will be in and out doing various tasks, but for the most part, there's no activities, nothing on the calendar. We do want to give them the opportunity to rest and enjoy their families, but also make that same goal for you and yours as well. If you do need us, though, throughout the week, you're welcome to send us an email. You can send me an email directly at david@paradisechurch.org. You can still call the church number, and when you get through the little menu, if you choose choose David, it will go directly to my phone, and so that will be on all week as well. So our church number is 330-875-2677 if there's anything that you need directly. And many of you already have my cell phone number as well. So if you need to reach me or any of the staff, you're more than welcome to do that. But again, we're just trying to keep things quiet during the week between Christmas and New Year's. And so we thank you again for joining us, and we look forward to sharing this final installment in this special Christmas message with you this morning. I wanted to lead us in a time of prayer this morning, and as a special way of entering into that time of prayer, I did want to read Mary's prayer out of Luke chapter 1. But just in general, want to point you to our bulletin, which is on the website. We still have a bulletin for today. We still have a bulletin for next week as well. In that bulletin, we have a number of names and situations that we continue to think about and pray for, especially this season. Anything that's going on in the lives of people, families, it gets really magnified over Christmas. And so we just want to remember those that are going through hardship, that are in need of healing and restoration, those that are mourning. Each of those situations, we just do want to lift them up in prayer this morning. So let's begin. And I'm going to begin our prayer by reading out of Luke chapter 1, starting with verse 46. And Mary said, "My soul magnifies the Lord, and my spirit rejoices in God my Savior. For he has looked on the humble estate of his servant. For behold, from now on all generations will call me blessed. For he who is mighty has done great things for me, and holy is his name. And his mercy is for those who fear him from generation to generation. He has shown strength with his arm. He has scattered the proud in the thoughts of their hearts. He has brought down the mighty from their thrones and exalted those of humble estate. He has filled the hungry with good things, and the rich he has sent away empty. He has helped his servant Israel in remembrance of his mercy, and he spoke to our fathers, to Abraham, and to his offspring forever." God, we do thank you for this morning. We thank you for this special Christmas day where we get to celebrate, we get to worship, we get to acknowledge the whole reason for this season is you. But even in saying that, the whole reason for this season is what you have done for us. What you sent your son to do for us, what you sent your son to give to us, to say to us, and to sacrifice for us. We celebrate the gift of eternal life, and all of that begins with the birth of your son this morning. So God, we bring to you those that are in need this morning, those that have situations that are dire, those that are battling illness, those that are looking for and waiting for answers. May the words of this prayer be the words that speak to us. May we look to a God that is active, that is strong, that is mighty, that is working on our behalf. And God, may you bring peace to families that are broken. May you bring restoration to those that are in need. And may we all bring the good news of what this morning means to those that are in need. God, we thank you, we praise you for this wonderful and beautiful Christmas morning. And all this we pray in your name. Amen. Well, good morning again. And most of you know, I love the Christmas Carol story. We have been in this story for all of Advent. We started this on the first Sunday of Advent back in November. And each and every week we have been walking ourselves through this story. And we bring that story to a close this morning, obviously on Christmas morning. And over the past few weeks, we have been journeying with Ebenezer Scrooge through his past, his present, and his future. In Scrooge's past, it was brought to light by the ghost of Marley. Like an Old Testament prophet, Marley shows up and tells Scrooge of all the things that have happened to him and all the things that he is neglecting in the present, that his soul is in bad shape. And that if he does not do something about both his past and his present, that his future indeed is going to be bleak. And so he is met, first and foremost, in the past by the ghost of Christmas past, and he is confronted with the choices that he makes. There are a number of things that happen to him, but there's also a number of reactions that he has to those circumstances that create a situation where he has a series of just bad decisions. And he looks back at those choices that he made, and he is full of regret. And then we are met with the ghost of Christmas present. As I've said for the last couple of weeks, he's my favorite, the favorite of the three. And he comes in his big and boisterous self, and he's bellowing, and he brings the energy of Christmas Day to Scrooge. But he also turns that message into a very pointed thing that Scrooge has to pay attention to. He sees what's going on in his life, but he also shows him what's going on behind the scenes with Bob Cratchit and his family, with his nephew Fred, but also what is all going on in the culture around him. And he is seeing that his life is flying past him, and he could have an impact. He could be an agent of change if he truly wanted to. And when the ghost of Christmas future shows up, we talked a lot about that on the third Sunday of Advent, we realize there's really no future at all. What the ghost of Christmas future shows is that, in fact, Scrooge is on the doorstep of death. That if he does not make a change, if he does not do something to change the course of his life, that in fact he is looking at the very last night of his life. But the future that is really predicted is a future without Scrooge, and a future that if he could have done something, these things could have been different. But because he chose to do nothing, this is the story as it finds itself. And it's just an incredibly powerful thing. But when we come to Christmas morning, when we come to today, Scrooge does awaken. And Charles Dickens, again, makes it clear that if he did not make the right choice, that he would not be, in fact, waking up on Christmas morning. But he does awake on Christmas morning. He has a change of heart. He is a completely changed and different person. It's not just a change of belief. It's not just he had one philosophy and now he thinks differently. No, it is a change of action. It is a change of doing, that he in fact has decided there's some things that he has to do. It is a very practical and meaningful change. And he wakes up and he realizes his room is in good order. One of the things he saw in the future was soon after his death that people would come in and they would ransack his room and they would tear down the bed curtains and his very sheets and blankets and all the wonderful things that were in his room, and his entire house was probably ransacked. And so he wakes up, and all that is back the way it normally was. And he has this incredible celebration. And so I'm going to read a portion out of these are the copies of A Christmas Carol that we passed out a few weeks ago. And so if you have a copy, you're welcome to open up and read in it. But I'm reading from page 98 of the one that we passed out. And this is Scrooge. He is ecstatic over everything that has happened, and the realization that he is not dead, that he has a second chance. And he says, I am as light as a feather. I am as happy as an angel. I am as merry as a schoolboy. I am as giddy as a drunken man. A Merry Christmas to everybody. A Happy New Year to all the world. Hello there. Whoop, hello. And I'm giving that a very understated response. He is probably dancing around the room. He is really just going crazy. It says he had frisked into the sitting room and was now standing there, perfectly winded. That he was just this very stately gentleman has been now jumping around his room, just overjoyed at what's happened. And then I guess the first question is, how many of us woke up this morning with that kind of feeling? How many of us woke up ready to just take on the day, take on the world, and to do something completely different? But skipping down a little bit, it says, really for a man who had been out of practice for so many years, it was a splendid laugh, a most illustrious laugh, the father of a long line of brilliant laughs. I don't know what day of the month it is, said Scrooge. I don't know how long I have been among the spirits. I don't know anything. I'm quite a baby. Never mind. I don't care. I'd rather be a baby. Hello, whoop, hello there. And what's interesting is he's using this imagery. It is very similar to the kind of language that we see all throughout the New Testament, but especially in places like John chapter 3, where Jesus is speaking to Nicodemus, and he is saying to Nicodemus that when you really need to see change, it is the idea of being born again. It is this idea of a new birth. And this stuns Nicodemus, and he's like, well, how can I be born again? But it's interesting that Scrooge is talking about this. He realizes that he is a baby. He has woken up. It is a completely new and changed life. Continuing, he says, he was checked in his transports by the churches ringing out the lustiest peals he had ever heard. Clash, clash, hammer, ding, dong, bell. Bell, dong, ding, hammer, clash, clash. Oh, glorious, glorious. So he has woken up to church bells. And of course, the church bells would normally ring on Christmas morning, but we're going to realize in a second that it's not just any normal Christmas morning that he is hearing these bells ringing out. So he rushes out to the window. He rushes over to the window and he realizes he's got a number of things that he has to do. His first order of business is he needs to address Bob Cratchit, his employee. And that's the very first thing that he wants to do. And actually on page 99, he throws open the window and he yells down to a boy that is running in the street below him. And he catches his attention. He says, "What's today?" cried Scrooge, calling downward to a boy in Sunday clothes, who perhaps had loitered in to look about him. So it's very interesting. There's a little clue there as to what day this is. Replied the boy with all his might of wonder. "What's today, my fine fellow?" said Scrooge. "Today," replied the boy. "Why, it's Christmas Day." "It's Christmas Day," said Scrooge to himself. "I haven't missed it. The spirits have done it all in one night. They can do anything they like. Of course they can. Of course they can. Hello, my fine fellow." "Hello," returned the boy. "Do you know the poulterer in the next street but one, at the corner?" Scrooge inquired. "I should hope I did," replied the lad. "An intelligent boy," said Scrooge. "A remarkable boy. Do you know whether they've sold the prize turkey that was hanging up there?" "Not the little prize turkey, the big one." "What, the one as big as me?" returned the boy. "What a delightful boy," said Scrooge. "It's a pleasure talking to him." "Yes, my buck." "It's hanging there now," replied the boy. "Is it?" said Scrooge. "Go and buy it." "Walker," exclaimed the boy. "No, no," said Scrooge. "I am in earnest. Go and buy it, and tell him to bring it here, that I may give them the directions where to take it. Come back with the man, and I'll give you a shilling. Come back with him in less than 5 minutes, and I'll give you half a crown." And the boy takes off and goes and gets the turkey. And so the very first thing he's wanting to do, he wants to get this turkey to bring to, he wants to bring it to Scrooge, to Bob Cratchit's house. And if you've seen any movie version of this, the turkey arrives, and Bob Cratchit and his wife, they'll take the turkey and make it. It's an incredibly large feast, and that's sort of a beautiful scene. But if you skip a few pages to page 101, in the very beginning of the book, there is a conversation. It's a very hard conversation that Scrooge has. There are two gentlemen that come to Scrooge's counting house. It's Scrooge and Marley's counting house. They're in the business. They're in sort of an agricultural business. They sell corn. They sell crops. They basically are in the market on some level. And these two gentlemen who are running the local charity, they come and they approach Scrooge and they ask him for a donation. And Scrooge basically says to them, I don't want to be put down for anything. And they said, do you want to be anonymous? And he says, I want to be left alone. And he explains, I'm not giving any money to the poor. He asks about a few institutions, the treadmills and the poorhouses and things like that. These very, very poor programs that were found in England in the middle of the 1800s. And in Scrooge's mind, well, these programs are there, and that's good enough. And so he turns away those two gentlemen. And he gets up and he gets dressed. It says on page 101, he dressed himself all in his best, and at last got out into the streets. The people were by this time pouring forth, as he had seen them with the ghost of Christmas present. And walking with his hands behind him, Scrooge regarded everyone with a delighted smile. He looked so irresistibly pleasant in a world that 3 or 4 good-humored fellows said, Good morning, sir, a Merry Christmas to you. And Scrooge said often afterward that of all the blithe sounds he had ever heard, that those were the blithest in his ears. Now he had not gone far when coming on toward him, he beheld the portly gentleman who had walked into his counting house the days before. So the two gentlemen that come in and had asked for a donation, and he turns them away. He sees them coming towards him on the street, and said, Scrooge and Marley's, I believe. It sent a pang across his heart to think how this old gentleman would look upon him when they met, but he knew what path lay straight before him, and he took it. And he goes through this process where he simply says, he apologized. He apologized for being rude. And he tells them a certain number to write down for a donation. We're not sure. Charles Dickens doesn't tell us the exact number, but he whispers it in their ear. And basically, that they're overwhelmed at how generous he is. And he says, don't thank me. Don't thank me. There's a lot of back payments in that amount. And so he wants to start by doing right or fixing the wrong that he had neglected for so long. But what's interesting is there's this passing comment. And when I started thinking about this series months ago, there's this little phrase that I want us to pay attention to. And it caught me because I've seen just about every version of the Christmas Carol on the screen. I've seen some stage versions. I've read the book a number of times. And this next section, I would always gloss over it. And I've never seen it in any of the movies. But right here on page 2, he ends this interaction with the charitable gentleman. And then it says, he went to church and walked about the streets and watched the people hurrying to and fro. And it sort of continues after that point, but if you don't catch it, you realize, wow, wait a minute. What did Scrooge do on Christmas Day? He goes to church. Now, what's amazing is that this book, the Christmas Carol, it was originally published in 1843. Charles Dickens actually sat down in the summer and the fall of that year, and he wrote it in about 6 weeks, and it was published 10 days before Christmas in 1843. But in 1842, Christmas Day, December 25th, it falls on a Sunday. And that really had to be what was in Charles Dickens' mind as he's putting this down on paper, that when Scrooge wakes up, it is not just Christmas Day, it is Sunday. And one of the first things that Scrooge does in going to fix the wrongs with Bob Cratchit and fixing the wrongs with the charities that he neglected, and eventually later in the story he's going to end up at his nephew Fred's home. All of that really begins with, or encircles, the idea that he goes to church. And Dickens sort of sprinkles it in. He has the church bells ringing. It's the church bells that wake him up. It's the church bells that orient him to, not only is it possibly Christmas Day, but it's also Sunday. When the boy comes running down the alley, he stops him. He makes the very quick note that the boy is dressed in his Sunday best. Now, church is not the answer. It's not, okay, well, Scrooge woke up and he turned into a good person and he went to church. It's not church that is going to change us. It is the grace and mercy of Jesus that makes the change in all of us. But undoubtedly, this has to be playing in the back of Charles Dickens' mind. Now, Charles Dickens, he's not writing a church story. He's not necessarily even writing a Christian story. But he has these references all throughout the story where he makes it very clear that this is an important part of what happens to Scrooge. Then his soul change, what happens to him in the process of this Christmas Eve into Christmas morning transformation, that there is something going on from the kingdom of God. Now, when he enters into the church, he's entering with this energy, and of course they're reading whatever they're reading that morning, is. They're probably reading from Matthew or Luke. They're studying the birth of Jesus. They're the story of Mary hearing from an angel that she is favored and she's going to give birth to a son, the promised Messiah. Joseph, who hears it and doubts at the very onset of it, but that eventually an angel visits him and says, "Do not be afraid to take Mary as your wife." The shepherds from Luke chapter 2, they see this concert in a sky, and they're told to go find a babe wrapped in swaddling clothes, lying in a manger. Probably one of the strangest descriptions of where to find the newborn king. All of this, and they're probably reading all of these. But part of me wonders if there was not another passage or two floating around the church that morning. As Scrooge is entering into this new chapter of his life, he first gives that life to God and asks for help. The passage that sort of came to mind when I'm imagining the scene, of course, in addition to all the beautiful Christmas passages, there is a verse that we find in Psalm chapter 143, verse 8. Part of me wonders if this is something that's really going on with Scrooge that morning. "Let me hear in the morning of your steadfast love, for in you I trust. Make me know the way I should go, for to you I lift up my soul." Now, in the book of Psalms, these are prayers that were uttered by an ancient king of Israel, this God-fearing king, David. But it also is very befitting to a miser that is trying to change his ways. Now, when we think about the Scrooge story, when we think about the Christmas Carol, some of it becomes very obvious. Be nice, be generous, stop being a Scrooge, all of that. But what's interesting, and I think what Charles Dickens is at least on the periphery trying to say to us, is that if we all knew the answer, we would do it. That's our hope. That's our goal. We kind of all know what is the answer when it comes to our health, and what is the answer when it comes to our money, and what is the answer when it comes to situations in our life. We kind of all know the answer, but the hard part is actually doing it. So even for us who know, we still forget. We'll pause, we'll wait, we'll put it off, we'll procrastinate, all those different things. What Scrooge does wisely, what Charles Dickens tells us in the book is before he starts to go back down any path, that he goes to church. And in his prayer, he is seeking God for help. God, help me to know what the next step is. Back into verse 8. "Let me hear in the morning of your steadfast love, for in you I trust. Make me know the way I should go." Make me know the way I should go. Okay? Hopefully that is our prayer this morning. God, help me know which way I need to go. So it is my prayer this morning, this Christmas morning, would bring all of us into this idea of God's unfailing love. The idea that God's love is unfailing, it's all throughout the Old Testament. It's ever present in the Christmas story. The idea that God's love, it never fails, it never changes, it never grows tired. That also we should put our trust in him. God, show us the way to go in this season. Now, maybe you need a change this Christmas season. I know I need a change this Christmas season. And the older I get, one of the things that's interesting is the idea of nostalgia becomes even more powerful. Every year that I have a Christmas, there is this idea that nostalgia gets even more and more powerful. We all want familiar things. We want the songs, we want the decorations, we wanted the tree to be in the right spot. There's certain traditions, there's certain orders of things. And when it comes to change, we don't really like change, and none of us really like change at Christmas. We're really looking for it to be something. Now, what's interesting is that even for Scrooge, that God works through nostalgia. Now, the Ghost of Christmas Past uses nostalgia in an interesting way in Scrooge's life. It is not that the ghost brings him back and Scrooge wants to go back and be 10 or be 17 again or anything like that. What nostalgia sort of points to, or at least what it turns up in us, is this desire. We don't want anything to change. We don't like anything to be new or different. At the same time, we still want a sense of surprise. We all wake up on Christmas morning and we want there to be a surprise. We want to be surprised by Christmas, by Santa or by something in the room or anything like that. We want to come down the stairs and have Christmas magic. And at the same time, we don't want anything to change. What nostalgia sometimes points to is not that the problem with things that have changed. Sometimes it points to the reality that you and I have changed, that we've changed. And we don't like it. And maybe there was a time 10 years ago or 20 years ago or 30 years ago when we were different or happier or in a better place. And perhaps sometimes that's just the way our mind works with us, but perhaps there's something in there that God is saying to us is that maybe we're struggling with where we're at right now. Maybe we do need to change. And what's interesting about Scrooge is as you look at Scrooge, Scrooge isn't he's not a bad guy, he's not a criminal, he's not a murderer, he's not violent, he's not loud, he's not a thief. The best I can tell, he just has let some relationships falter. He has focused on himself. He has let all the relationships in his life take a back seat to his ambitions. He's put himself in front of the people in his life that he really needs to be taken care of. He becomes busy, he becomes miserly, he becomes greedy. The problems in this world are not his problems. The problems in this world are way outside of him. And yet, the universe decides that Scrooge needs help, that his soul needs to be fixed. Often our prayer or complaint at Christmas time is for God to fix the world. We look around and we see all this brokenness, and we kind of want Christmas to be this thing that will bring that elusive peace on earth. That when we think about the problems in this world, we're sort of stumped because it seems like all these problems are out here. That if God were really to do something, it would be something with someone else or another situation. But the answer that comes to Scrooge is the same answer that comes to us this Christmas morning. God will change this world, and that begins with you, and that begins with me. He will change the world through us. In the middle of the Christmas story, Matthew chapter 1, verse 22, it says, "All this took place to fulfill what the Lord had spoken by the prophet. Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and they shall call his name Emmanuel," which means God with us. The message to Scrooge, the message to all of us, is that it's not that the problems out here are things that God is going to fix. He is going to work on all these problems. He's going to work on all these situations. He's going to work on them with us. He's going to work on them through us. That if we really do want to see the world change, that we do in fact have to see it done through us. That God has big plans for Scrooge. He has big plans for you. He has big plans for me. And that first requires a change from all of us. The beauty of Christmas is this idea of God with us, Emmanuel. That is the gift of Christmas. It's the story of Christmas. It is this thing we celebrate this morning. Now, I want to close today's message with the final couple of sentences from A Christmas Carol. It says, Scrooge was better than his word. He did it all and infinitely more. And to Tiny Tim, who did not die, he was a second father. He became as good a friend, as good a master, and as good a man as the good old city knew, or any other good old city, town, or borough in the good old world. Some people laughed to see the alteration in him, but he let them laugh and little heeded them, for he was wise enough to know that nothing ever happened on this globe for good, at which some people did not have their fill of laughter in the outset. And knowing that such as these would be blind anyway, he thought it quite as well that they should wrinkle up their eyes in grins and have the malady in less attractive forms. His own heart laughed, and that was quite enough for him. And it was always said of him that he knew how to keep Christmas well. If any man alive possessed the knowledge, may that be truly said of us and all of us. And so, as Tiny Tim observed, God bless us, everyone. Have a Merry Christmas, and we'll see you next Sunday on our January 1st Sunday, and we'll see you back in the building on January 8th. God bless. Take care.